Hey everybody, welcome to a very special holiday 4th of July edition of Inside Guns with your host, me, the Yankee Marshal. You might ask, why are you working on the 4th of July? Well, it's a good excuse not to have to go to any parties. That's for sure. Got this in a podcast. How could I possibly go anywhere? So that way I don't seem antisocial. But I want to get into something today because it's been a topic of discussion in my live chats. And if you want to come to live chats, like I always say, they're every night at 6 p.m. except Monday and Wednesday at 5 p.m. Come join us, especially if you want to tell me off, if you think I've been wrong about something. And you might want to do that after today, because what I'm going to say today is probably not going to be very popular with a lot of people. The subject that came up in my live chat is about a new law in Washington that is increasing the ways the state can take away your gun rights. It's adding a bunch of offenses that will qualify now as a serious enough offense, like a felony offense, to take away your right to own guns. We all know already that there's a ridiculous law that says if you've been convicted of felonies, you can't have a gun, even if those felonies aren't violent or don't involve guns, which I don't agree with at all. I think if you're not in prison, you should have your rights, period. To vote, to own guns, everything. If you're a danger to society that you can't exercise your rights, well then keep you in prison. And if we didn't do this ridiculous war on drugs crap where the prisons are filled with people who did nothing more than use or distribute drugs, usually just use, we'd be able to do that. And if we weren't worried about making profit off the prisons, we'd be able to do that. But like I was saying, it's raising some things to a level where you will lose your gun rights. Two of the things I want to address specifically today, and I might get this completely wrong because, I don't know. I have invited Mr. Kirk from Washington Gun Law to come on the chat, and he has agreed to do so. I just need to get with his secretary and arrange it. So hopefully we'll be able to discuss this with him shortly. I am going to contact his secretary tomorrow. Hopefully they'll be in the office. But two of the things I want to discuss that are now reasons to have your gun license taken away, and not only your gun license, but your Second Amendment rights, which means, like I said, they're basically being elevated to felony level, is violence against animals, cruelty to animals, and DUI. If you get a second DUI, you get 2 DUIs now in the state of Washington, you can lose your Second Amendment rights. It's basically a felony. Same thing with cruelty to animals. And people have been kind of freaking out, like, oh my God, these things are going to get people to lose their gun rights, etc. Well, here's how I see this. I almost totally agree with this. Not with you losing your gun rights over these things, but with them being felonies. I'm not going to defend someone who abuses animals. Throw them in the clink and throw away the key. Lock them up. Put them under the jail for all I care. The kind of people that are cruel to animals are not the kind of people that I think should keep drawing breath. And it wouldn't bother me at all. So the fact that they would be convicted of a felony, I think it should already be a felony. The way things are now, that if someone comes across your property line and, kills your dog with a ball bat because he just wants to kill your dog, doesn't like your dog, was more of a property crime than anything else. And I don't agree with that. That should be a felony. And any punishment that comes along with a felony should come along with that. And in this country, felony offenses come with the loss of gun rights. Same thing with DUI. I think DUI should be a felony, at least on the second time. First time, maybe, a high-class misdemeanor where you have to go through training and blah, blah, blah. You should lose your license, as far as I'm concerned. There's never a reason to drive drunk. If you're going somewhere and you're going to drink, don't drive. Uber exists. Cabs exist. Buses exist. If you're going somewhere and you have to drive, then don't drink. Oh my God, I had a day where I couldn't consume alcohol. How is that horrible? And how does that somehow justify you endangering other people's rights? Because you can't possibly have a day where you can't drive out, can't drink alcohol or can't drive your car. Your right to drive or to drink doesn't overrule someone else's right to live and not have you endanger their life by being on the highways drunk behind the wheel of a deadly weapon. Cars are more deadly than guns. And I don't want to hear any rationalization saying, well, it should be okay if blah, blah, blah. No. If you're drunk, don't drive. If you're the kind of person that goes out and knows, hey, I might get intoxicated, don't drive. If you go out and you get intoxicated, don't drive. If you can't avoid driving, don't drink. Like I said, your right to drink, neither your right to drink nor your right to drive your car override someone else's right to not be endangered by your irrational behavior, your reckless behavior. So I don't support drunk driving at all, and it should be a felony. And if in this country you accept the fact that if you have a felony, you lose your gun rights, well then you would lose your gun rights because it should be a felony. The problem here is that you shouldn't lose your gun rights for a felony. I'm okay with making these other things felonies because I think they already should be. I'm so sick and tired of hearing someone say, oh, it was his 6th DUI and he killed someone this time, so it's serious. It was serious the first time they got behind the wheel of a deadly weapon while intoxicated. And like I say, I'm not saying everyone who, if you drive, you can't ever drink. If you're some guy who goes, I go out every Thursday with my friends and play pool and I have 2 beers and I weigh 230 pounds, and I'm there for 2 hours. Well, then there's nothing wrong with that. You're not going to be driving drunk. But if you're someone who has a tendency to little overdo it sometimes and you can't ever anticipate when you're going to overdo it, don't drive. And if you do drive, don't drink. Like I said, I'm tired of hearing this. Oh, on the 7th, 8th DUI, they killed someone. Now it's serious. It was always serious. Same thing with abusing animals. I don't want to hear, oh, it was, property crime. No, that was a serious crime as far as I'm concerned. And to me, it tells me a lot about that person's mental state. Most serial killers start off on animals. That tells you something. So I'm okay with both those things, like I said, being felonies, but I'm just not okay with people losing their gun rights because of felonies. If you want to say, all right, if you do these things, we're going to take your gun rights, I think you should have to put them in prison for it. If you're willing to put people in prison for animal cruelty and put people in prison for drunk driving, well then yeah, they'll lose their gun rights while they're in prison. The issue isn't what things constitute felonies. The issue is, should you lose your gun rights because of a felony? That's the actual argument. That's the actual fight. And no, you should not. You should only lose your gun rights while you are imprisoned. Once you've served your debt, you should have all your rights back. Once you have been rehabilitated, supposedly, that's what prisons are supposed to be about, you should have all your rights back. If you're not safe to have your rights back, you shouldn't be out of jail. Period. You should still be locked up. If you're a danger to society, keep you locked up. Period. So if you're willing to lock people up over DUIs, willing to lock people up over animal cruelty, which I think people should be locked up for those things, or at least receive therapy, addiction treatment, etc., for the DUIs, and just buried under the prison for the animal cruelty. If you do those things, well, once you're locked up, you lose your gun rights. But once you're back out, you should get them back. Because like I said, the argument here isn't that those particular things are not bad enough to be felonies. Because if we get ourselves into that situation where we're defending drunk driving, where we have to, because we don't agree with people losing their rights over drunk driving, and we have to specifically defend drunk driving, or God forbid, specifically defend animal cruelty, we look like assholes. We look like monsters. My position on this is, yes, those things should be felonies and people should be treated like they committed a serious felony when they do these things. They should be locked away if they can't do otherwise. But once they're out, or if you're not going to lock them up, period, then they should have their rights. Because the issue is that whole idea that just because someone made a mistake or has something on their record that they now can't have their rights back, that's ridiculous. If you're a free man, you should have all your rights. You've paid your debt. You've been rehabilitated, supposedly. So you should have all your rights. That's the real issue. We don't want to be defending animal cruelty. We don't want to be defending drunk driving. We just want to take on that ridiculous idea that if someone made a mistake, that they somehow lose their rights as a citizen for the rest of their life. That's ridiculous. That has no basis in history, period. Now, back in the times of the founders, if you were locked up, of course you weren't allowed to have guns. Once you were out, you could go back to owning your rifles and whatever. That's the way it was, and that's the way it should be. That's the argument we need to be making, is that you can only lose your gun rights while you're locked up. We don't need to be defending things like animal cruelty and drunk driving just because they're being elevated to felonies, because those should be felonies.